me start off with a little background info. I'm a 14-year-old Canadian male, and this happened around a year ago. This story is nothing but the truth. Me and my grandparents are extremely close and have been all my life. So my grandfather is an outdoorsy, get-off-your-phone kind of guy, and he pitched the idea to go camping. I was kind of excited because I don't get outside as often as I should, and I figured it would be some great quality time with him. That being said, we weren't going true camping. He wanted to go into the woods, and I brought up the idea of a nearby campground we could go to. He was still thrilled, so we embarked on our weekend journey. Let me paint a picture. Our campsite was a dead end, aside from another tent next to ours. It was right near the lake. It was beautiful, but to our dismay, we had people right beside of us. We still did all of the camping things, made a fire, went swimming, and even the infamous spooky stories around the campfire. We decided to go to bed around 10 p.m. because there was not much else to do. As soon as my head hit the pillow, though, it started. The crunching of leaves on our campsite. We thought nothing of it at the time because the night was still young. Some jerks were setting off fireworks and others were having a raging party. Heck, even our neighbors were still laughing. I fell asleep finally, for a while. Around 11 p.m. is when it started to get weird. The party was still on, but our neighbors had shut up, so the crunching of leaves didn't make sense. It was consistent, so my guess is the noise was footsteps. No one needed to be on our campsite, so falling asleep was now a slightly bigger challenge. My grandpa seemed to be having an even harder time as he seemed to be on alert mode now. Yes, I know we were both paranoid, but I feel like the paranoia keeps us safe. I woke up and checked my watch. It was almost midnight. It started to rain. The water splashing against the rocks and the thunder in the distance was quite enough to get some sleep. Even over the sound of rain pattering against our tarp, I still hear the footsteps. The unsettling nature of the situation starts to eat away at me. I wasn't scared, just creeped out. Sleep eventually overcame me, but it didn't come easily. My grandpa finally slept too. A crack of thunder woke me again. Full-blown thunderstorm now. I felt relieved, as I thought the footsteps had stopped, until I heard the thump of wood. I don't know what the person did, but I heard two very loud knocks, followed by two large splashes. Forget this, was my only thought as the footsteps continued around our campsite. I stayed completely still for the next 2 hours. 5 a.m. Daybreak was near. But my heart nearly exploded when I heard some fumbling with the tent zipper in the fabric. I saw the outline of 3 fingers being dragged across the tent. My body shut down as they came closer and stopped when the fabric brushed against my head. Every nerve in my body told me to scream, but I didn't. The hand trailed away and became quieter as they left our campsite. I woke my grandfather as soon as the sun came up. Before we left, I went to investigate our site. Lots of the ground was turned into mud in the storm, so the massive footprints were easily noticeable. Easy to say, we got the heck out of there. This happened 2 to 3 years ago, but I still think about it every now and then when I'm walking alone and no one's around. I was volunteering at a school in a rural area about 3 kilometers from my home. I didn't know how to drive, and I have an irrational fear of biking. That's another story. So I didn't mind walking home every Wednesday. I was 19 at the time, but just know that I looked at least 3 years younger. Short girl, round face, big eyes, no makeup. It was winter. It was cold. It was raining, and I had no umbrella. It's fine though, I like the rain. And I was covered from head to toe, so I still enjoyed my peaceful walk with music blasting through my earphones. But as I was walking, I saw something in my peripheral vision that I was always scared to see in a situation like this. A car slowing down, following me. I didn't know what to do. I tried not to assume the worst, and I turned to see whether that was the only car on the road or if there were potential witnesses in case something happened. No, just this one car following me. No one else around as far as my eyes could see. Then, the driver lowers his window and I see his face. Old man. Seems to take care of himself, unfortunately. Not weak looking. Eyes fixed on me. He asks me, "Where are you going? Would you like me to take you somewhere?" I take off one of my earphones. Huh? I had heard him, because at that point I had already turned down the music to be more aware of my surroundings. Plus, despite not wanting to assume the worst, I still wanted to buy some time to think of an out. Where can I run? Can someone hear me if I scream? Can anyone else see us? Where can I get help? Well, there was no one, and nowhere to run or really hide. I was walking in this very rural area. On the side of the road that had a field on one side and the woods on the other. There was just one abandoned house up ahead. So I tried to reason with myself. This man is probably just concerned that I'm visibly walking a long distance, right? "Oh, no thanks. I'm fine. I like walking." "Oh, no. I don't care about that. I just want you to get in the car." What? Maybe he's concerned because it's raining and I don't have an umbrella? No thanks. I know, it's raining, but I like the rain, so I'm okay. "No, I don't care. I just want you to get in the car. I'll drive you to where you need to go." Really? I'm giving this potential kidnapper 2 excuses, and he doesn't take them? His intentions are becoming clearer and clearer. I can't ignore this anymore. And he never breaks eye contact. Like he's analyzing me, every move and reaction. I'm starting to notice that his smile is starting to become more sinister too. Is it just my fear tricking me? This whole time I'm trying to look as friendly and naive as possible because I don't want him to realize that he can't trick me into getting into his car and his only choice would be to use force. Remember, no one can hear me if I scream. "Listen, I just want to talk to you. Can I?" Well, okay. What is it?" I ask. No, I mean, I want to talk to you properly. Get in the car, I just want to talk to you." That's the only moment when he breaks eye contact, and it's to slowly look at me from head to toe. "Well, you know what? How about I park a little bit further and you can join me to have a chat?" Sure. I don't know if you'll find a place to park anywhere close, but go ahead if you want to, sir. I'm only walking straight anyway." "Perfect. See you there?" "Yes, sir," I say. He smiles and drives away. I wait for his car to be far enough so he can't see me, and I immediately run toward the abandoned house to hide, while I make a call to my mom for her to come get me. The police wouldn't do anything since I'm not in immediate danger. We've tried to call them once after some serious threats from a stalker, and they just told us to only call them if the stalker was on our property. That's also another story. I explain everything to my mom, and she tells me to send her a screenshot of Google Maps with my exact location, just in case something happens, and to stay hidden while keeping an eye on the road to see if the man's car appears again. I'm about to end the call when I see the car drive by again. And what do I see? He's looking right at me, as if he already knew exactly where I was hiding, waving at me with a smile on his face, still with this, trying very hard to seem friendly vibe. He knows I'm hiding and on a call with someone now. He knows I wasn't as naive as I pretended to be. Then, he just drives away. My mom is still on the phone with me, so I tell her what just happened, and she tells me to stay calm and wait for her. We end the call. I wait. He doesn't come back again. My mom's car appears much faster than I anticipated. I get in and we go home. I still can't wrap my head around what exactly happened and what could have happened. The thought, though, will remain with me for a very long time. In the mid-70s, my family lived near the Trinity River Plaza in the little community of Kingofscaresyt, Texas, about 40 miles northeast of Houston. We moved there because my parents were able to buy 5 acres of land at a really low price. My parents also bought a new single-wide trailer house and moved in there in 1974 or 75. I was 6 or 7 at the time. I remember that house. It was my parents' first home that they didn't rent. It only had 1 bathroom, but it had 3 bedrooms. After living in a 2-room apartment in Baytown, it was like moving into a majestic castle. It came fully furnished: beds, dressers, appliances, a living room set, and a colored television. I can remember my mother doing a little dance in the kitchen because she had a real refrigerator and a dishwasher. It was set up on railroad ties and the wheels were removed, and my dad had put a work curtain thingy all along the bottom to keep the animals from getting underneath. The week before this particular incident happened, I cut a gash out of my side just above the hip from running around the front of the house and not remembering that the tongue of the trailer frame was sticking out about 5 feet. The little latch that secures the ball hitch into the receiver is what got me. We'd lived there about a year when this story takes place. We bought a section of land that was at the entrance of the road that went to the plaza. It was a dirt road, and it followed our property line to a corner where the road made a 90-degree turn and followed our property line up to the state highway. About half a mile past the entrance to the plaza, the state highway came to a dead end. It was an isolated community. There was very little traffic there that wasn't a resident. You should know a little bit about the plaza, or the bottom, as we called it. The road into the bottom was the same dirt road that passed our house. That dirt road was one of my mom's biggest gripes. Everyone drove too dang fast, and the dang dusty dirt air covered every dang thing in the dang house. This was our first house with an air conditioner, and I guess she was afraid she'd wear it out, because she usually left it off and opened the windows unless it was just too hot outside. All of the houses in the bottom were built on stilts because the river flooded every year. The water from the river sometimes got as far as our yard, but it was rare. When the bottom flooded, the only way in or out was by boat. For about 3 weeks every summer, there'd be 20 or so cars parked on both sides of the road in front of our house, and everybody would come and go in the boats. The cars were left unlocked, and some had the keys in ignition. I was warned by my father on the threat of death and dismemberment to stay away from those cars. Another thing you should know about the bottom is that most of the people who lived there were unemployed or underemployed and mostly uneducated. Everyone down there hunted and fished. There was also a still or two, and pot plants actually grew wild in places, as well as in 5-gallon buckets on the occasional deck or elevated porch. The best way to politely describe the general population of the bottom is hillbilly. Oh, and lots of guns lived there too. My brother, me, and my mother were all home alone. I was maybe 6, and my brother would have been 4. We were in the middle of a big South Texas thunder boomer storm. Lightning was flashing everywhere, The accompanying thunder would literally rattle the entire house. The rain hitting the metal roof of the trailer made a steady, dull roar inside the house. You had to talk louder than normal just to be heard. My mother was busy getting candles and matches ready because such a storm normally knocked out the power for at least 2 hours and usually 4 or 5. My father worked shift work at a steel mill about 35 miles away and wasn't due home for another hour or so. This was in a time before Atari and Nintendo and CDs and DVDs and VCRs. We had an aerial antenna that pulled in a grand total of 3 channels that were clear only on the best of days. My brother and I were standing at one of the lower windows watching the lightning strike. I was watching a car come up the road from the bottom. The dirt road was loose gravel over compacted clay, and it got slick in places when it rained. About once every 3 months, someone would come home drunk or high and try to take that 90-degree turn too fast and would wind up in the ditch. In the first year that we lived there, I must have seen the bottoms of 5 or 6 cars and trucks. They would get sideways in the turn and hit the ditch and roll over. It was always good fun to watch the tow truck roll them back over and haul them off. Sometimes I could sneak up to the fence on our property and watch everything from a front row seat through the barbed wire. Then, after the car or truck had been hauled off, I'd go and look for change that had fallen out of the car. I even found a box of bullets once. I got a spanking for bringing it home. Anyways, I'm watching this car come up the road from the bottom, but I can tell he's being safe and not driving too fast. Just as I made this realization, my brother screamed bloody murder in my ear. He was screaming so hard his body locked up and he lost his voice and just made a rasping noise. When he screamed, it scared me, and I screamed. My mother came running from the kitchen, her bathrobe spreading open like Batman's cape. She grabbed my brother, who was still trying to scream, and asked him what has happened. At the same time she was scooping him up in one arm, she was pushing me away from the window with the other. When she pushed me, she accidentally hit my bandages from my encounter with the tongue of the trailer. It hurt, and I started crying too. So now we're all 3 on the couch. Mom is doing her best to comfort the both of us. I'm okay after a few minutes, but my brother is still hysterical. He had the hiccups and was trying to tell her what he'd seen. He could only say, Buddha, which was his word for monster or booger. As it turns out, someone's cows had gotten out and there was a big bull in our yard. As my mother held my brother and was at the window showing him that it was only a big cow, she suddenly stiffened and backed away from the window. She put my brother down and went to the phone. She picked up the phone and started to dial. We were on a party line with 2 other families, an elderly couple who were hardly on the phone, and a family with a teenage girl who was hardly off the phone. I could hear my mother whispering into the phone. I guess she was trying not to scare us, but she was so scared herself that I could hear everything she was saying. Deborah, get off the phone. I need to call the police. Yes, the police. Will you please hang up so I can call? I have an emergency, that's why. Deborah, will you please just hang... Finally, my mother was able to call the police. She told them that she was looking out the window to show my brother that it was only a cow in the yard when the lightning struck, and she could see a man in the tree in our yard. Yes, he's in the tree, watching the house. Please hurry. No, the doors are all locked, and I have several pistols. Turn out the lights? Are you crazy? Oh, okay, that makes sense. She gave them directions to our house and hung up. Before she turned around, the phone rang its little 3-ring jingle that was assigned to us. It was Deborah's father calling to see if everything was okay. My mother told him everything as she was running around carrying my brother and trying to turn off all the lights. She snapped her fingers at me and gestured at me to turn off the television. Mr. Taylor said he'd come over and stay until Dad got home. He said that he would be there in about 5 minutes. Mom hung up the phone and told me to come with her into the den. There weren't any windows in the den. We went into the den and could hear the rain coming down harder than ever when we got still. She put my brother onto the sofa beside me and went to the bedroom to get one of my dad's pistols. The ammunition was kept in the cabinet above the kitchen sink, probably to keep me and my brother from getting into it. The problem was that she turned off all of the lights and my father had 8 or 10 different pistols and she couldn't find the ammunition for the pistol she had. In frustration, she pulled the cord of the light that was mounted under the cabinet to turn it on and was trying to read the boxes. Her hands were shaking so badly that she had to set the box on the counter and bend over to read the type of ammunition she had. She would get a box and set it on the counter, holding it with both hands, and then she'd get another. She was on the 4th or 5th box when she looked out of the window above the sink and promptly lost her cool. The man was outside the kitchen window looking in at her. His face was less than 2 feet from hers. I remember her stumbling back into the table where she'd left the pistol. She grabbed it and pointed it at the window and just started pulling the trigger. Luckily, it was empty because it was at this time that Mr. Taylor started banging on the door. My mother spun towards the door and pulled the trigger some more. Then she heard Mr. Taylor calling her name, and she unlocked the door for him. He stepped in out of the rain with a shotgun as big as him. He was a little man, and asked what was going on. She was hysterical. She tried to talk calmly, but ended up screaming anyways. "He's in the backyard. He was just looking through the window at me." As she said this, she was pointing with the pistol at the window over the sink. Mr. Taylor didn't say anything. He just turned around and ran back out into the rain. After a few seconds, we heard him shouting, and then, boom. Silence. And then, boom. And then silence again. By this time, my mother was holding me and my brother at her side like an old mother hen, but she was shaking so hard that we had to sit on the sofa. After what seemed like hours, someone knocked on the door again and called my mother's name. It was Mr. Taylor. He was completely soaked, and the first thing he did was apologize for getting the floors wet. "Son of a gun shot at me." He said it like he was surprised and it had hurt his feelings. Then he held up a hand with 2 fingers spread apart like a peace symbol and said, "Whist," with a T on the end of it. "I can't believe he shot at me." My mother got him a towel, and he told her how the man had pulled out a pistol and shot at him as he came around the corner of the house. He told my mother that the man shot once and then ran and jumped over the chain-link fence and then shot again before running down toward the bottom. Then he said that the man was the tallest man he'd ever seen in his life. Flat-footed jumped that darn fence. Didn't even break stride. He said that he'd wait with us until Dad got home. My mom was making coffee when the sheriff stopped outside with his lights on. He just trotted up to the door when my father pulled into the yard. They all started talking and were still talking when I got sleepy and fell asleep on the sofa. The next day, the sheriff came back to see if he could find anything. He was hoping to find a bullet lodged in a tree or something, but he couldn't find anything. The one thing that I do remember that gives me chills to this day was the sheriff standing outside our trailer house under the window that was over the kitchen sink. The window where my mom encountered the prowler. The sheriff was talking with Mr. Taylor and had asked him to go over everything step by step for the 3rd or 4th time. The sheriff wanted to confirm that the prowler was standing under this particular window, pointing up to the kitchen window, a good 1.5 feet above his head. What was he standing on? The sheriff was looking around for a stack of bricks or something. Mr. Taylor said he wasn't standing on anything. He was just standing there with his hands behind his back looking into the window when I came around the corner. He just turned and looked at me and pulled out a little pistol and shot at me. Then he ran over to the fence and jumped over it like it was only a foot tall and then started running to the bottom. As he's running, he pointed the pistol behind him without looking and shot at me again. He said this like it still hurt his feelings. The sheriff was stuck on thinking about the window and asked again if this was the correct window. When they measured the window, the bottom edge of the frame was over 8 feet from the ground. That meant that for him to be looking inside at my mother, he would have had to have been at least 8'6". We lived there for several years after that, and even though that was only one creepy night of several, we never saw him again, nor did anyone from the bottom. I still get goosebumps whenever I stop and think about that night.